If you care about how past societies actually survived, not in theory, but in dirt, sweat and seasons, subscribe to Iron Age Instincts now, because this is exactly the kind of knowledge that gets lost when history turns abstract. What follows isn't trivia. It's one of the most quietly powerful agricultural insights of the ancient world. And once you understand it, you'll never look at soil, farming or food security the same way again. For nearly 2,000 years, communities with little metal, limited tools and marginal land managed to feed themselves reliably. They didn't do it with miracle fertilizers or imported grain. They did it with one crop that thrived where others failed and somehow made the soil better. Every year it was grown. That crop was the broad bean, also known as the fava bean, and its role in Iron Age survival has been badly underestimated. So, why did Iron Age farmers really need crops that could survive on, well, pretty bad land? You see, Iron Age agriculture was constrained by reality in a way that modern farming honestly just isn't. Fields were often newly cleared, shallow, acidic, rocky, or already exhausted from earlier Bronze Age use. Ploughs were simple, manure was limited, and those long fallow periods often meant hunger for many families. Grain crops like wheat and barley were, of course, valuable, but they were also quite demanding. They stripped nutrients from the soil and needed careful timing, decent fertility, and, well, predictable weather. Just one bad season could mean famine for the whole community. Iron Age farmers needed something resilient, something that could be grown on land others had already written off. Broad beans answered that need. They tolerated poor soils, colder temperatures and irregular rainfall. They could be planted early, harvested reliably, and stored with, honestly, minimal processing. In marginal zones across Europe, the Mediterranean and the Near East, beans were often the difference between subsistence and collapse. What made this crop different from everything else in the field? The true power of the broad bean wasn't just that it produced food, it was that it changed the soil itself. Broad beans belong to the legume family, plants that host nitrogen-fixing bacteria in nodules along their roots. These bacteria pull nitrogen from the air and convert it into a form plants can use. To Iron Age farmers, this wasn't biology, it was observation. They noticed that land planted with beans grew better crops the following year. Unlike grains, which drain nitrogen from the soil, beans actively replenish it. When bean plants were harvested and their roots left to rot in the ground, nitrogen stayed behind. Fields that had been nearly useless slowly recovered. This wasn't accidental. Archaeological pollen records and crop rotation evidence show beans being deliberately planted before cereals. Iron Age farmers were managing soil fertility long before anyone had words for it. So, you see, broad beans weren't just a side dish. They were a staple, really. High in protein, complex carbohydrates and minerals, they filled nutritional gaps left by grain-heavy diets. For labourers, warriors and travellers, beans provided sustained energy without reliance on meat, which was, well, often scarce and expensive. Dried beans, stored well, travelled easily and could be cooked in a single pot with minimal fuel. In times of conflict or crop failure, beans became, a form of insurance. They could be eaten green, dried for winter, or ground into flour. Roman soldiers later carried bean rations for exactly these reasons, inheriting a practice already common centuries earlier among Iron Age peoples. One reason Iron Age settlements could persist in poor landscapes is because, beans made those landscapes viable. Hillsides, cleared forest soils, and previously overworked plots could actually be rehabilitated through repeated bean cultivation. This allowed communities to expand without constant relocation. Over time, mixed farming systems developed, with beans restoring soil after grain harvests and before grazing cycles. This is visible archaeologically in regions like Iron Age Britain, Gaul and central Italy, where bean remains appear alongside early plough marks and permanent field systems. If you're working marginal soil, sandy ground, or land that's been exhausted by modern monocropping, the Iron Age solution still works. Planting broad beans early in the season requires minimal soil preparation. They tolerate cold and can germinate when other crops fail. Once harvested, cut the stalks but leave the roots in the ground. That single step preserves the nitrogen-rich nodules. In the following season, plant heavy feeders like corn, wheat or brassicas in the same plot. You'll see stronger growth without synthetic fertilizer. For small-scale survival gardens, beans can act as both food and soil repair. In larger plots, rotating beans through sections of land every few years steadily rebuilds fertility. Modern agriculture is, rediscovering what Iron Age farmers never forgot. Soil isn't an infinite resource. Chemical inputs, they mask depletion, but they don't restore resilience. Broad beans represent a closed-loop system where food production and soil health actually reinforce each other. That's why this crop endured for centuries without industrial support. When you look at Iron Age farming through this lens, it really stops being primitive. It becomes adaptive, efficient, and deeply informed by experience. The people who relied on this crop weren't just guessing. They were running long-term experiments across generations. If you found this valuable, go ahead and subscribe to Iron Age Instincts. Share this with someone who still thinks ancient farming was unsophisticated, and stay tuned. There's a lot more buried knowledge just waiting to be brought back to the surface.